three nations in particular that are being affected by this virus in pretty egregious ways. So those are Iran, Palestine, and Yemen. Now, of course, there are a lot in South American countries that are also just getting ransacked. I think in Colombia, they're getting to the point where they're just straight up burning bodies just so they don't have to report a higher number. So they can say, yeah, things are all fine here. Brazil is just a mess right now with Bolsonaro. I think he tested positive or something, and then he didn't release his results and went out and just met with a bunch of people. I don't even know. But we're going to go into nations that have already been attacked relentlessly and cut off relentlessly by the U.S. and U.S. allied states, and how, with this COVID-19 pandemic happening, it's just a new form of genocide for them. So we'll start with Iran. Pretty recently, Iran has come into the national spotlight in early January. I think it's like January 3rd. We launched an airstrike that killed one of the top generals in Iran, General Soleimani. And that nearly led us to direct war, like a hot war with Iran. We're doing other dumb stuff with them. But even before that, like in 2019, or even 2018, I'm not exactly sure. Pretty much since Trump took over the presidency and put Mike Pompeo in charge of Secretary of State, we've just been escalating with Iran nonstop and applying so many crippling sanctions on them. If we go back to the Iran nuclear deal that Obama passed in 2015, essentially what we're doing, this is a very quick breakdown, is we're giving Iran back their own money that we took from them, and in response, all of their nuclear reactors, they will only use those for energy producing capabilities. In fact, the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Association, can come by at any time, inspect those locations to make sure that they're not getting above a certain enrichment level, which would hint that they're trying to weaponize the uranium. So we would give them back money. They would allow the IAEA to come in at any time. And the only thing that we needed to do to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon for 10 years or something until 2025 was not put sanctions on them. That's it. We didn't need to do anything else. And we put sanctions on them. We put economic sanctions on them. I think it was to take out, to prevent oil trades or something. But we went a little further than that, which is we also threatened to sanction anybody who traded with Iran. So we didn't just say, hey, we're not trading with you on these things. We don't want it. We're saying anybody else who trades with you, we're going to cut them off. And of course, we're an economic superpower. There's no way that a country like, Germany can be like, oh yeah, I'm going to keep trading with Iran and cut the U.S. off from my supply. No, it's not possible. So we just crippled them entirely. We started escalating tensions with them by putting military bases around their entire country, propping up Saudi Arabia, which is openly hostile to Iran, and Israel as well. We did everything wrong if we wanted to calm down the situation with Iran. But then, now that the COVID-19 pandemic is going on, we're doing even more to make things awful for them. So the International Monetary Fund was trying to do a $20 billion loan to Iran to help them get, medical equipment and basically have so many fewer people die from this pandemic, and we blocked it. Secretary Pompeo and Donald Trump were concerned that the money that would be going to Iran would actually be going to prop up the heads of Iran, and it would lead to more terrorism. They called Iran the world's leading state sponsor of terror. It's absurd at its face, even if you're looking at terror within that region specifically. Like Saudi Arabia openly props up radical jihadist groups. But then if you even know the most basic knowledge about Islam, you'd know that Iran is Shia Muslim, and Shia Muslim is like the peaceful part of Muslim compared to Saudi Arabia, which is Sunni. So we're saying, no, you cannot have this money because you're just going to use it for terrorism. We don't believe you will use it to help your people, even though their people are dying, like, I think at the peak or something, or not even at the peak. We haven't even hit the peak with them. I think I read a couple of weeks ago that it's like every 9 minutes an Iranian citizen is dying from COVID-19. I can't remember where I read that from, but that's the thing is they're going through this just like any other nation is. And in fact, they're going through it worse because they can't get these medical supplies. They can't get the help from the international community. And all we're doing is we're just shafting them. Now, the International Monetary Fund, we're not actually going to be blocking this vote to give them money, because how the IMF works is if they will only pretty much bring something to the table if they know it's going to be passed unanimously. And we have veto power. So all we do is we go up there and we say, yeah, if you bring this up, we're going to say no to it. And the IMF doesn't even waste their time. So it's never going to come about that, yes, we specifically voted no on this money going to Iran. That's just not going to happen. But by saying that we're going to do it, effectively we cut it off. We just signal that we're going to say no, and the IMF not even going to waste their time. So we're cutting off this nation that really needs the supplies. I listened to a podcast. I'm forgetting the name of the podcast. I'll put the link in the description here. But it was with an Iranian nurse, Zara Shafi, who was basically talking about how, yeah, Iran, they're making progress with their health institution, especially on the public side. But it's not the easiest thing to do when the whole world is working against you. So if we were to give them this money, it's obvious. We know the money would go toward helping the actual people, but Pompeo, his whole shtick is topple countries that we don't like. And the only reason we don't like Iran is because we toppled their leader to put in our puppet, and then they revolted against our puppet. That's it. There's really not much else. And so now they're going to be hit one of the hardest in the world. The other one that's going to be hit hard is Yemen. So Yemen has been under Saudi Arabia attack since, I believe, 2014. When the Houthi rebels took over Yemen, they toppled whoever was leading that. And Saudi Arabia was like, we're not having that. We're going on the offensive. Started a bombing campaign. We actually, for I don't know how many years, but we were refueling Saudi jets mid-air doing this bombing campaign on Yemen. We've stopped doing that. I believe a bill, who was it? It wasn't Mike Huckabee. It was some Lindsey Graham. No, not Lindsey Graham. There's some Republican senator who worked with, I think, Bernie to get this passed, and like, all right, so we're going to stop the U.S. from refueling Saudi bombers mid-air so they can turn around faster and kill more children. But Saudi Arabia has also been blockading the ports of Yemen, so food and medicine have not been able to get in. There's been a cholera outbreak in Yemen for at least the past year. You solve cholera by putting 1 tablet into the water supply. That's all it takes to fix it, but their ability to get medicine was just entirely cut off. So they weren't being able to be assisted at all. And it's been a genocide. It's been the worst humanitarian crisis in the world for who knows how many years running. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic, it's going to be hitting. I'm sure it's already hit Yemen. It's going to be taken off like a wildfire. Now, Saudi Arabia has stepped back and said, oh, okay, we're going to do a 2-week ceasefire on Yemen, which is absurd on its face. Like, their reasoning was, this coronavirus is really hitting Yemen hard. Maybe this will finally bring them to the table and they will negotiate with us and we will put an end to this needless war. This is from Al Jazeera, which tends to be a pretty good news source for stuff going on in the Middle East, but Al Jazeera is funded by Qatar, and Qatar is kind of with Saudi Arabia on taking out Yemen, so the bias in the article is clear of how Saudi Arabia is like, oh, we need to stop this ceasefire, or we need to stop this war. We'll do a two-week ceasefire, come to the table. We don't want your country to be just devastated by COVID-19. It obviously, Saudi Arabia does want that to happen. This 2-week ceasefire, I've heard from, I guess it's rumors and stuff, that no, they just actually didn't want their own people to be infected, around the area. I don't even know. But yeah, it's Yemen. Unless Saudi Arabia lifts all these sanctions and stops blockading their ports and allows medical supplies to come through to help treat this virus, I mean, Yemen is going to be just like a lot of these other places where it could have. They're definitely going to get, ruined, but it could have been a lot less bad had we allowed this help to come through. But the reason why I say less bad is even if, we were to give Yemen the top of the line, stuff like every nation in the world came together to say like, all right, let's see how well like we can prevent death in Yemen specifically, it still wouldn't be enough. Because, like I said, Saudi Arabia's been bombing this place for 5 years. They've been cutting them off for so long that the institutions that would otherwise exist just are not there. There's nothing that the world can do to prevent that from being one of the worst, hit locations in the world. It's going to be right up there with Iran, with some South American countries, probably some, more Central African countries as well, even though it's kind of funny. Africa blocked off immigration from Europe, which is, kind of funny because usually historically it's been the other way around, where Europe is like, oh, we need to cut off these, the Africans, the Muslims, but then they go in there and like raid their people anyway. But yeah, Yemen's just going to be terribly hit, and then, of course the third place is Palestine, which is being occupied by Israel right now. And I haven't read into this. I haven't come across any articles explicit on how Israel plans to deal with an outbreak that happens there. I know there was a rabbi who just got infected recently, and so it obviously it's hitting Israel. It's going to be hitting Palestine, but I wonder how it's going to play out if this becomes large scale and they start to overflow their hospitals and their ICU beds, because it's pretty obvious, knowing how Israel's acted these past several years, that they're going to institute some kind of requirements or litmus test to be like, all right, we have 2 people and 1 hospital bed. Who gets it? It's probably going to come down to, if one of them is Jewish and the other one is Muslim, it's probably going to be the Jewish person who gets it, just based on how Israel has worked through their apartheid laws leading up to this. So we'll see how that goes down in Palestine. Again, places like the West Bank in Gaza just completely cut off. And we're supporting it. That's the thing, is all 3 of these nations, they're just getting hammered, or will be hammered, by COVID-19. We are supporting their eventual demise, and we've been supporting their demise for so long now. It's unbelievable that, or it's not unbelievable, it's actually right in line with the U.S. interests in terms of keeping oil money, keeping regional hegemony, that we want to take these places down, and the virus is just another great way for us to do it, and a great scapegoat for us. Because I will not be surprised if in 2 years, 3 years, when Yemen is just wiped off the map, there's going to be some very smart academics who look back and be like, yes, the reason for this is COVID-19. They just couldn't protect themselves for whatever reason. It was the Arab mind, the diseased Arab mind, just prevented them from countering it effectively. They didn't do any nationwide lock. It's just stupid shit like that is going to come out. Even though it's Western nations and Western friendly nations in the region just doing whatever they can to eliminate any opposition or anything that they don't like, anything that doesn't line up exactly with them. So it's hard to watch. It's going to continue to be hard to watch. And the U.S. governments, especially those in power, can and should do what, just lift sanctions, help them out, and pressure these nations to do the same. Because this is, it's a disgusting humanitarian crisis, and it will continue to be. It's hard to watch.